Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As we have entered the period of political preparedness, we are addressing those issues that we find to be most pressing in our community. And one major issue is housing. Here to address that issue is the Minister of Housing and Public Safety, Lieutenant Colonel David Burch. We also have, who will follow him, Patrice, current MP and candidate for Constituency 10. Lieutenant Colonel Burch.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher. Good afternoon. I do wish to highlight some of the items that were contained in the throne speech, and even though Parliament is prorogued, we have the authority and the ability to proceed on that basis. You'll know that I'm not a candidate in this general election, so I get to spend my time working as the minister responsible for housing, public safety and housing, and doing that work and trying where I can to get my colleagues elected. Some of the initiatives that were announced in the throne speech do not comprise the entire package. Some of them didn't make it there, and some of them don't rise to the level of inclusion in the throne speech. But there are a number of items that are on the agenda that are currently being worked on. The response so far to the interest-free down payments for homes for first-time Bermudian homeowners, 500 of them, has been very encouraging in the sense that people have been writing and calling me as opposed to the agency that we have to provide housing for Bermuda, the Bermuda Housing Corporation. That is the list that we will use first to work our way through to see if anybody on that list requires the assistance of the corporation in terms of an interest-free down payment. I expect that we will exhaust that list without exhausting the 500, and then it will be open to others in the community who may be in need of assistance. In relation to rent geared to income, you will know that we have implemented that some time ago, both at Anchorage and Butterfield Lane. We have also, concurrent with that, been working on the legislation because it is our desire to enshrine the concept in legislation. And so the legislation will in fact catch up with reality. We started earlier than we anticipated because we wanted to trial it on small properties such as Butterfield Lane, where there are only 12 units, so that by the time Perimeter Lane came online, which is the property that we originally were going to start with first, we will have had the experience of managing rent geared to income. In relation to the 600 families that are currently rental tenants of the Bermuda Housing Corporation, about 320 of those do not have arrears and will be converted to geared to income at lease renewal. And so that process is ongoing and will go on for the next several months. As individual families' leases come up for renewal, they'll be converted to geared to income. In relation to Laughlin's, which I think people are now quite familiar with, and if you travel the South Shore, you'll see that Mr. Lopes is making tremendous progress. People should not be concerned that the first 3 buildings, there appears to be a slowing down in work. They are not due to be delivered according to the contract until January 2008. But what he has done is attempting to get the roofs on the phase 2, 3 buildings, so that during the winter months, when there is bad weather, he can have his people working in all 6 buildings. Those 21 families that are moving into the first phase at Laughlin's will be meeting, I believe it's next week, with a view to bringing them together so they get to know their neighbors before they actually move, and they can think about how it is that they're going to manage that process and that complex, because they will form the nucleus of the condo association at Laughlin's, and as the other phases come online, those families will join the association. In addition to that, we recognize, and it's slightly stepping outside of the remit of the corporation in terms of providing housing, but we recognize that many of our clients and tenants have other issues, social issues, if you like, in terms of budgeting and just basic housekeeping. And so we have launched a significant program called Breaking the Cycle, starting with all of the rooming house tenants that we have. And it is a program that lasts 6 weeks. It is mandatory for those clients, and they must participate in that program in order to be able to provide it with the tools so they can better coexist together and be better positioned to graduate from transitional living to ultimately to apartments. Now, this is a kind of a sidebar to the cross-ministry initiative team initiative that was launched a few years ago with 10 families that occupy the manufactured homes. And so what it is trying to accelerate that process. 2 of those families have graduated and 2 other families have moved in. But it is a lengthy process that involves complete intervention by the helping agencies. It's primarily led by the Ministry of Social Rehabilitation, but it's a joint effort between the Bermuda Housing Corporation, that ministry, and the Department of Child and Family Services. I think that covers the main points that I wish to raise, Mr. President. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of the Minister?
Minister, you mentioned that the Breaking the Cycle initiative is an offshoot of the CMIT. Is it that the CMIT program was perhaps not as effective as you would have liked?
No, not at all. The CMIT program, because of its intensity and because it involves complete intervention with the family, is a long-term process. And the restrictions on it are that there are only a limited amount of resources that are available to commit to it. But we recognize from our own data gathering at the rooming houses that that sort of program, to a lot lesser scale, is required in those facilities. And so rather than do nothing about it, because it helps us in terms of the behavior of our clients as well as their ability to remain current with their rent, that it was important that we implement something, because what we are doing is putting together a large number of people to coexist together. And we want them to do that in peace. We have recently concluded the occupation of the Wyndham dormitories at the end of last month, and those clients have moved to Gulfstream. Half of that building has been completed. And so part of that process was we wanted to have complete intervention before they move from one facility to another and carried the same issues with them. So what it is adding to the CMIT process so that a number of those families may not need, at the end of the day, the type of intervention that CMIT is designed for.
How many families have been assisted by CMIT thus far?
12. There are 10 as part of the manufactured homes, 8 at Morgan's Point and 2 in Somerset. 2 families have graduated from those units into permanent accommodation, and so the 2 additional families have joined in. But it is about an 18-month process, and so it's lengthy and it's intense. And so there are some families that don't require that level of intervention. And so what we're doing, we will be able to assess those families through Breaking the Cycle that need to be referred to CMIT, and others that can graduate from that and go into regular rental accommodation or purchase their own home.